Be sure to pre-order your copy of the Go-Go Offense by Coach Brennan Marion as he takes you through the ins and outs of the most explosive offense and most exciting offense in college football. You can find it on our website at footballgameplan.com/GoGoOffense. Welcome to Football Game Plan, where football makes sense. I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Mike McCarthy is your producer today. It's the summertime and preseason is just around the corner in the NFL, and we'll get you ready for the upcoming 2019 NFL season as we preview the New Orleans Saints. Now, as we kick off the season preview, let us take a look at some of the key storylines heading into the season as we go into our 4-minute offense.
In the bayous of New Orleans, Drew Brees has been the face of the Saints franchise since 2006. A surefire Hall of Famer, Brees is the NFL's all-time leader in passing yards with a whopping 74,437. He's also the leader in number of 5,000-yard seasons with 5. Will he throw for 5,000 yards again? In order to further pad his stats and give the Saints the best chance at winning the NFC South, he'll have to do just that. Max Unger's trade from the Seahawks in 2015 gave the Saints one of the NFL's best centers. However, he retired this offseason after 10 years in the league. Eric McCoy was drafted to fill his shoes, and after a successful career at Texas A&M, he's sure to be a worthy replacement. McCoy was the top-rated center on many top 50 lists and mock drafts this offseason, so he's sure to be a starter come Week 1. Another dominant year for Alvin Kamara is on the cards in 2019. Last season, as part of a two-headed monster backfield with Mark Ingram, Kamara had 1,592 total yards on 275 touches, with 18 touchdowns to boot. Now that he's the undisputed top back in New Orleans, look for him to be an even more dominant player, with Latavius Murray as a clear number 2. Michael Thomas has been one of the most dominant wide receivers since he's come into the NFL. But is he deserving of the $22 million per year contract he's been rumored to be looking for? His stats say that he is. In just 3 seasons, he's caught 321 passes for 3,787 yards and 23 touchdowns. He was also a first-team All-Pro last season. Look for Thomas to maintain his aerial dominance and secure the bag in 2019.
It's time to put this team under the microscope and go position by position to see where they stand as we head into the 2019 season, and we'll start on the offensive side of the ball at the quarterback position. While Drew Brees is coming off of an MVP-type season, tossing 32 touchdowns to only 5 interceptions for nearly 4,000 yards and completing a ridiculous 74% of his passes, you saw some signs of decline this past season. So the 40-year-old Brees can still get the Saints where they ultimately want to be, but it probably won't be for much longer, which is why the Saints being able to re-sign Teddy Bridgewater, who was able to give them some time last year in the last game of the season, was huge. It gives the Saints an heir apparent for Brees without having to scramble and find one once he decides to hang up the cleats. Taysom Hill's role on the team as a Wildcat player figures to grow even more so this year, as he was an additional weapon offensively for New Orleans. In the backfield, the Saints have some legitimate questions, as for the first time since 2010, Mark Ingram won't be in the backfield for the Saints. New Orleans hopes that it can get at least stable play from a few free agents like Latavius Murray and Buck Allen, or even undrafted rookie free agent Devine Ozigbo out of Nebraska, none of which have the combination of talent and skills that Ingram has, so the jury is still out. Or the Saints could just turn over the feature back reins to star tailback Alvin Kamara, who led the Saints in rushing last year with 883 yards and 14 rushing touchdowns. Kamara is as big of a dual threat player as Christian McCaffrey is for the Panthers and hopes to get his opportunity to prove that he can handle the load for New Orleans. The Saints got great play last year from Michael Thomas on the flanks. The fourth-year pro finished with a cool 1,400 yards receiving and 9 touchdowns. What's been impressive about his game is how consistent he's been throughout a game, more so in clutch situations. He's hoping to get a long-term deal done to keep him in the Big Easy for quite some time. Now, finding a consistent number 2 outside of him seems to be an ongoing quest for the Saints. Last year, the second leading receiver was rookie Traquan Smith with 427 yards, which was third behind Alvin Kamara. So the Saints really need Smith, Keith Kirkwood, and Ted Ginn to join the passing party early this season. Veteran Cam Meredith hopes to regain his form after working his way back from an injury last season. So he played some, but wasn't what they expected him to be when they signed him via free agency. Now, there's a host of opportunities for guys like Austin Carr and rookies Emmanuel Butler, Lil Jordan Humphrey, and Deontay Harris to make a play for a roster spot. Where there is promise for the passing game this year is at the tight end position. This spot has been fairly mediocre since Jimmy Graham left town. While they did get some stable play from veteran Ben Watson, the 2019 version of this group could be the Saints' best since Jimmy Graham. In free agency, they signed Jared Cook, who is coming off his best season as a pro in Oakland with nearly 900 yards and 6 touchdowns on 68 receptions. All were career highs for Cook. At 32 years old, the Saints hope that he still has an upward trend to his career. They also drafted Alize Mack out of Notre Dame to potentially be their flex option in the passing game. Mack finally started to realize his potential last year for the Fighting Irish and gives New Orleans a younger, more athletic version of Cook. And if Dan Arnold can find the consistency within his game from a catching perspective, then they can legit go 3 deep at the position with receiving threats. 4 if you count the blocking aspect of Josh Hill's game. Up front, the Saints quickly made a move in the draft to get Texas A&M center Eric McCoy to be the starter as Max Unger retired, and McCoy graded out as a 5th center in this year's draft class according to Football Gameplan Scouting and was one of the top players in the SEC. Elsewhere within their starting 5, they're actually strong from left to right with arguably the best unit in the division. New Orleans also has strong depth here as well with Nick Easton, Will Clapp, Michael Ola, and Ryan Groy. I would also keep an eye on undrafted rookie free agent offensive tackle Ethan Greenwich out of Villanova. I was at that Temple game and he dominated that performance. He also dominated his level of competition and has some flexibility as a guard as well. And here is how I graded out the Saints offensive units. On the defensive line, there's a lot to be excited about this upcoming year. The Saints invested in this unit this offseason with free agent defensive tackles Malcolm Brown, Sylvester Williams, and defensive end Mario Edwards from the New York Giants. Brown could start the season as David Onyemata will miss a game due to suspension. Now, they're expecting big things from Onyemata this year as he'll step into that full-time starter role alongside Sheldon Rankins, who returns from injury. Now, with Rankins probably not a full go by the start of the season, in conjunction with Onyemata's suspension, keep an eye on both Taylor Stallworth and undrafted rookie free agent Kenny Bigelow out of West Virginia, who played great football in the Big 12 last year, as they could find themselves garnering some rotational minutes on the inside. At defensive end, Cam Jordan is coming off a 12-sack Pro Bowl season and is one of the best defensive ends in the NFL. What's expected this year and could really transform this defense is the growth and development of second-year player Marcus Davenport. If what we saw in just flashes from him last season can be strung together consistently for a full 16-game slate, then the pass rush for New Orleans could be deadly. I'm also expecting big things from third-year player Trey Hendrickson as well. He just has a knack for turning the corner and being disruptive and figures to play a lot this season. The linebacking core was solid last season and looks to be that way again in 2019. Getting Demario Davis last year was a big-time addition to this defensive unit as he led the team in tackles last season, and A.J. Klein was also good as well as he finished 3rd in that category. Alex Anzalone is strong in pass coverage and could give way at times this year to reserve Vince Beagle, who has an opportunity for an increased role this upcoming year. The club selected Caden Ellis, out of Idaho in the 7th round this year in the draft, and he has a lot of A.J. Klein in his game, and I'm excited to see how they'll get him involved in his defense as well. On the back end, cornerback Marshawn Lattimore just continues to excel as one of the top corners in the game. The third-year player finished last season with the team leading 12 pass breakups and picked off 2 passes. Opposite of him, New Orleans got strong play from Eli Apple, who came over midseason from the New York Giants. The former first-round pick was able to complement Lattimore really well and even had his highest interception total of his career, which was 2. But still, nonetheless, he was able to be in on a lot of plays. His presence allowed the Saints to keep P.J. Williams in the slot where he's best suited to play. You love his toughness, you love his competitiveness, and his ability to shake off bad plays and then come back and make a good one. Depth will be interesting to watch here as they bring in Marcus Sherrills from the Minnesota Vikings, who instantly helps them in a return game, but how much will he factor in to the regular defense is yet to be seen. And how good can Patrick Robinson be after missing the majority of last season with a broken ankle? And it wouldn't surprise me to see the Saints use rookie safety Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in more of that nickel corner slot safety role, as he showed great ability to do so and handle those duties at Florida. Gardner-Johnson gives the Saints their most versatile safety since Kenny Vaccaro. Speaking of the safety spot, the Saints are especially strong there with the addition of Gardner-Johnson, as well as when you add in the fact that free safety Marcus Williams and Von Bell are solid, dependable starters who make their fair share of plays on a consistent basis. Now here's how I graded out the Saints' defensive units. What was a weakness last year seems to be a strength now for the New Orleans Saints, and I'm talking about the tight end position. In the offseason, they signed free agent tight end Jared Cook. They also drafted Alize Mack out of Notre Dame. And as an undrafted rookie free agent, they have Lil Jordan Humphrey from Texas, who can serve in that pseudo Marcus Colston role or be essentially a bigger F receiver or tight end, so to speak. So I'm going to show you how they can get those three big bodies on the field and generate a big play, whether they are inside the red zone or across the 50-yard line. So we have Alize Mack here, Lil Jordan Humphrey. We're going to put in a tight alignment Michael Thomas, the best wide receiver in the league, and we're going to also add Jared Cook. And what we're going to do with Alvin Kamara in the backfield, try to generate a lot of different big play opportunities. When people see three tight ends on the field, they tend to think, okay, this is a running formation. But with New Orleans and these particular tight ends, you have a situation where, hey, you still have to be well engaged in the passing game because these are threats that can hurt you deep down the field. So what we're going to do is have Michael Thomas run a simple crossing route. So he's going to pass through maybe 4 to 5 different windows. And if Breeze doesn't see something he likes, he can easily come and check it down to a guy like Michael Thomas. So he can run a cross formation and find an open window. We're going to run a pseudo play action fake right there and drop him back. We're going to bring Alvin Kamara down the sideline and hopefully running with a linebacker or an over aggressive safety that bit on a crossing route or some other route that we're going to draw here, because we're going to have Lil Jordan Humphrey run an intermediate dig route. We're going to take Alize Mack and bring him over the middle of the field in the post, running to the post because he has that deep speed. Bringing Jared Cook over in motion, getting right behind Alize Mack, and we're going to bring him up, and he's going to run to the corner. So you're going to have the safety in the bind. You have the safety, truly two safeties. Let's say you have two safeties back deep, trying to cover 3 deep routes. You have a corner that may be matched up on the tight end, which is a matchup that you would want. You could have potentially a backer here against a running back, or a safety against a running back, which means a corner will be matched up against a tight end. So New Orleans, with their personnel, has given themselves ample opportunity to be very successful this year on offense. Last year, they struggled to find a guy that could be that consistent threat at the tight end position, whether it was Dan Arnold they tried to bring in from Division III, or was it Josh Hill, whom they tried to make that guy for many years. They lose Ben Watson, but when you add a guy like Jared Cook or Alize Mack or maybe a Lil Jordan Humphrey amongst other undrafted free agents that should make an impact, New Orleans' offense still has a lot of options and a lot of big playmakers this upcoming season. Defensively, the Saints were solid last year. They want to get better in 2019, and when you look at what they've added in Chauncey Gardner-Johnson out of Florida, a nice combo defender that can play free safety, strong safety, slot corner. But what I like about his game is the fact that he's also a very good blitzer and is very good in the open field. So there could be a situation where even in their base defense, let's say their base nickel defense, you can have 2 safeties, Von Bell and also CGJ, as we're going to call him, on the field at the same time and still be very good versus the run. Show you what I'm talking about here. It allows you to be aggressive, and you can put both safeties on the same side if you're afraid of these guys really running front side against you. But you see, we put 2 tight ends on the field, and we put Chauncey Gardner-Johnson on the backside and Von Bell here. You can even flip-flop those guys. So when you have 2 guys that are very good versus the run, that are unafraid of contact and a physical discussion, you can get aggressive with your front 4. So you can take away those inside gaps and put a lot of the onus on these guys to make open field tackles because they're so good with it, and also your backers. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to take this defensive end. We're going to crash him inside here, take away these inside gaps, crash that defensive end on the inside. So all the inside gaps are taken away. So this run, if you're a running back, this thing has to go on the outside. And when you have to go on the outside, you want to match speed with speed. And that's why you bring him aggressively in a pursuit situation where you got a fast guy making a play. So if this guy comes downhill and wants to cut it back, he's going to cut it back into a guy that's after making a one-on-one play in space. Also have Von Bell there in case this is a lead block here with the tight end. He's able to take on that block, which allows his backer free reign to make a play. Because again, crashing those inside gaps, you take their ability away of trying to climb to the second level and getting this guy a block. He's a pursuit guy, and you have help here with the corner and then the free safety. So by having guys that are really good as run defenders, but also very good in coverage as strong safeties or combo safeties, the Saints still put themselves in a very good position to be great defensively, not only versus the pass, but also versus the run.
The New Orleans Saints are up next, and this is going to be, you see the stuff behind me, folks. I'm a Saints fan, born and raised, but I can be objective about my team, and I'll try to be objective right now. Drew Brees, greatest quarterback of all time. No. Drew Brees, I don't think he'll have a huge season, but I think Drew Brees, it'll be league dependent on whether you draft him. Drew Brees, because of people's understanding of his arm's not the same as it used to be 5 years ago, and that the Saints are looking to run the ball a little more, he might fall, and he might actually tumble to that 9th or 10th round. Folks, if he's in the 9th or 10th round, you take Drew Brees. Because there's one thing I know, is even if he doesn't put up stellar numbers, he'll never put up a stinker. And that's a lot of times what ends up killing people, is stinkers from your quarterback. You want a quarterback who doesn't put up stinkers, but can put up great performances. Unless they're so physically gifted that they may put up a stinker. Let's say Cam Newton, but then the next week they put up 40 points. So Drew Brees, you can get lucky. I think he'll fall a little further than he should this year. And you can get him around that middle round range when you've already gotten 3 running backs, 2 really good receivers and a tight end, or 3 receivers and a tight end, and you're good to go. Alvin Kamara, also a top 3 pick, which kind of makes you wonder. I think he's for sure top 3 pick. I think Zeke Elliott's the 4th pick this year in any format, just because of everything going on. And also, I think that Dak's going to throw a lot more than people think. But Alvin Kamara, yeah, any format, top 3. I think he is the number 2 pick this year in the draft. Latavius Murray, he has some value. There's some standalone value because they will utilize him near the goal line. They will utilize him if Alvin Kamara needs a breather, break, and if, God forbid, he gets hurt, Latavius Murray in that offense can put up some fantasy points. He will have value, just not until 9th or 10th round, personally for me. Michael Thomas, we know what it is. He's not going to get out of the top 20 picks. The other Saints receivers, though, this is tricky. I do not like either Saints receiver being taken in any round before round 14. Roquan Smith, talented. Ted Ginn always seems to put up solid numbers. I can't take either. They're flyer players. They are something happens flyer players until Roquan Smith proves himself, or unless they're playing against a team where there's going to be funds and bunches like they're playing against the Bucks secondary from a couple of years ago where everyone's going to score. Otherwise, you can't play him. The guy you can play in the receiving core outside of Michael Thomas is Jared Cook. Jared Cook, barring injury, will have a really good season. He's going to have 65 receptions. He's going to have 875 yards. He's going to have 7 touchdowns. For a tight end, that's really good. And then Will Lutz, of course, is a kicker. But yes, I wouldn't touch any Saints receiver not named Michael Thomas or pass catcher per se in Jared Cook.
Troy Anthony here, bringing you the best bets for the New Orleans Saints. The Saints win line opens up at over/under 10.5 games. This season, Drew Brees and the Saints have the 11th easiest schedule in the league. At -106, I'm taking the over 10.5 games. I also believe that the Saints are going to make the playoffs, so I'm going to go with -250 for them to go to the show. They're one of few teams that could be in contention for the NFC Conference this year. Right now, you can get them at +375 to go to the Super Bowl. I'm Troy Anthony. That's all for now. Follow me on Twitter @FootballFandom, replacing the O's with zeros.
I'm David Hassagen, and this is Huddle Up with Hassagen. We're going to do some quick takes on the New Orleans Saints, starting with this year's breakout candidates. Emery, who do you like for your hometown team?
I think when you look at Keith Kirkwood, the wide receiver in his second year, was an undrafted guy, stepped up to play a big role for them last year. I think he's going to take an even bigger step this year now that he's more acclimated and comfortable with the offense. And defensively, Trey Hendrickson, whom they drafted a couple of seasons ago out of Florida Atlantic, very good pass rush, and he could have an opportunity to really step up if they can't get the production from their 2018 first-round pick, Marcus Davenport.
You talked about first-round picks. No first-round picks for the Saints this past year. Which rookie is going to be the impact guy on the offensive and defensive side of the ball?
Tight end Alize Mack out of Notre Dame. Highly touted high school recruit, started to put together last year. The Saints needed a tight end. They went out and got Jared Cook, and they draft Alize Mack, I think, as the second option in that depth chart at the tight end position. he's going to see a lot of off coverage. He's going to have a chance to thrive. Defensively, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, the safety or defensive back out of Florida. He can play corner, he can play safety. He's very good versus the run, great instincts and ball skills. You add him to a secondary that now has Eli Apple and Marshawn Lattimore, P.J. Williams, and Marcus Williams. They have a great opportunity to be very good this year on the back end, even with Von Bell as well.
Who do you think the X factors are going to be for the Saints?
Jared Cook. They didn't have a tight end. They hadn't had a threat at that position since Jimmy Graham. Ben Watson performed well, but he was getting up there in age. But Jared Cook is a difference maker, and that's going to help out the offense. And defensively, they need Marcus Davenport to be the X factor. They drafted him in the first round, traded back to get into the first round. That's why they didn't have a first round pick this year, because of Marcus Davenport. They need him to be Pat Swilling or Ricky Jackson and not a guy that's just kind of a good player. They need him to be a difference maker.
Right. Let's talk about some of the training camp surprises. Who are you looking at for New Orleans?
I think offensively, you look at all those undrafted free agents. You got Lil Jordan Humphrey out of Texas, could play receiver or tight end. Manuel Butler, we remember him at Northern Arizona, big time wide receiver. They also have Deontay Harris, who could be this year's version of the Beer Man. Michael Lewis, a return game, dynamite threat. Also got a little Darren Sproles in this game. And Ethan Greenwich, the offensive lineman from Villanova. Teron Armstead is a very good tackle coming from the FCS level in Arkansas Pine Bluff, but he hadn't played a full season in his career. So there may be an opportunity for Greenwich to get on the field. And defensively, Vince Beagle, I think he's a very underrated player. He's probably going to be more of a special teams role for the Saints, but I think when you look at what he was able to do at Wisconsin and what he can do here versus the run and even in the short area coverage, that's a chance to be a surprise.
What are your reasons for optimism and concern for New Orleans?
I think the optimistic part is that they're going to be much better defensively. I think their defense has gotten better the last 3 seasons. And also on offense, getting more threats at tight end. So now when Drew Brees has a tight end, we saw what he was able to do with Jimmy Graham. He has 2 good options, in my opinion, in Jared Cook and also Alize Mack, the rookie. Cause for concern, the running game. We don't know what that running game is going to look like without Mark Ingram. Can Alvin Kamara be the main guy? And does his role change? And does his ability as a threat change now that he's going to be the full guy? Or will they utilize Buck Allen or Latavius Murray, neither of which are guys that really scare you? And so that way they can use those guys and keep Kamara in that role, but we don't know. So that right there can give you a little bit of concern right now for New Orleans offensively. Emory Hunt Thazar, the Playbook here, and joining me now is fellow football game plan analyst Troy Anthony for this 4 Downs with Thazar segment, continuing our preview of the New Orleans Saints as we take a look at the road to the Super Bowl for the Saints, starting with one of the first points I want to make. Not since they had Jimmy Graham, the Saints haven't had a threat at tight end. If the tight end now with Jared Cook, Alize Mack, the rookie, and some others can become a threat, that opens up the entire offense. The Saints were in the Super Bowl. Now, granted, they were in the mix the last 2 seasons without a tight end. So imagine now if they had a tight end that was a threat, a significant threat. Jared Cook seems to be that guy. If he can be that guy, then the Saints offense is going to be outstanding this year.
Yeah, I like the Cook signing. You thought that when he went to the Packers that he was going to really explode on the scene with Rodgers. He had a nice catch in the playoff game against Dallas. Then he went to Oakland, didn't really do anything. He had a nice one-hander on the sideline. But Drew Brees knows how to use his tight ends. I don't want to say he made Graham, but he burst Graham onto the scene. So that signing of Jared Cook, I think, is going to be ideal for them. Sticking with the offense, though, the running game. What's going to happen with Mark Ingram's departure? I don't know if Kamara can be that 3-down back. Or we know that he can catch out the backfield. I don't know if he'll be able to consistently run in between the tackles. I know he rushed for close to 800 yards last season. Is he going to be a 1,000-yard rusher? Does he need to be a 1,000-yard rusher? But I believe that they do need another complimentary back to Kamara.
Yeah, because they signed Latavius Murray, and I don't know how much confidence you have in Latavius Murray being the guy to lead your offense out there in the running game. So you're right. Maybe they don't need him to be a 1,000-yard guy. Maybe they have to use Murray. Maybe there's someone else on the roster that they can turn to and find someone to steal some of those carries away.
I would like to see if they can put Buck Allen to use, because Buck Allen has been a guy who showed real talent in spurts. He would show with Baltimore for a week, disappear for 2 weeks. Show for 2 weeks and disappear again. But there's something about Drew Brees who can get the best out of all of his players. So I would like to see what he can do.
He has to make sure he holds on to the football. That was one of his issues in Baltimore. And speaking of inconsistency, if they can get Marcus Davenport, their second-year player from UT San Antonio, to be a threat. Remember, they traded up in the 2018 draft back into the first round to get him. To me, that told me that, okay, they expect him to be a difference maker. When you trade back into the first round and sacrifice a 2019 first round pick, you better be Ricky Jackson. You better be Pat Swillen. You better be Joe Johnson, Wayne Martin, any other one of these great Saint defensive ends. Darren Howard, you better be one of those guys. Last year, it was up and down as a rookie, expected, but you trade back, that means you're supposed to be a threat. They need him to be that guy this year. If he is a threat opposite of Cam Jordan, then his defense is going to look lights out. They were fun to watch last year. I thought they were really solid as a unit at all three levels. They needed a difference maker outside of Cam Jordan. Now, Alex Okafor is gone. Here's your opportunity, Marcus Davenport. You have to step up and be the guy. If he can be that guy, be a threat like Jared Cook could be at the tight end position, the Saints are much more explosive on both sides of the ball this season.
It's going to be interesting to see how that front develops. But with that front developing, it's only going to help out the secondary. And I can't wait to see how that secondary develops. Beginning of last season, they were decent. They make the trade for Eli Apple. He comes in immediately. Apple on one side, Lattimore on the other. They start shutting teams down. So to be able to see that for a full season this year, it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I think they still need a little bit more depth in the slot. PJ Williams was their slot corner last year, and he played adequate. You know, he plays some good ball. He's competitive. He's tough. He tends to get grabby in coverage. He has to play better. They have another slot corner that they can go to that can be a guy that can take the ball away. Now you put two ball hawks out there on the field, because right now you only have one in Marshawn Lattimore. You don't trust Eli Apple with ball skills, although he did have his most interceptions last year as a Saint as opposed to what he was with the Giants.
That's what I'm saying. He really wasn't on the map when it came to the Giants. The Giants took him in the first round. He gets traded to the Saints, and all of a sudden he starts to develop a name. So it'll be interesting to see how him on the Saints develops this year.
Yeah, it's going to be something to watch this year for New Orleans. And when you talk about the Saints, you're talking about a team that has to be able to have that success on both sides of the ball. If they can close out defensively, we saw what happened last year in the NFC Championship game against the Rams. Granted, the penalty was the penalty, but they still should have come up with defensive stops in overtime.
In overtime, yeah.
And they didn't do that. If they're able to get pressure, frustrate the pocket, Saints could be right back in the Super Bowl like they were a couple of seasons ago. I have the Saints finishing first in the NFC South. I think this year defensively, they'll be much better overall. They'll be able to get to the quarterback and thus turn the ball over at a higher clip. So I think this Saints defense will be a lot better in 2019. Offensively, a lot of the same key pieces remain. More importantly, Drew Brees, Sean Payton, Alvin Kamara. That offensive line, I think that continuity will help push them through the very tough NFC South. For this season preview, I'm Emory Hunt, the czar of the Playbook. Be sure to follow me on all of our social media accounts, and don't forget to check out and subscribe to Football Gameplan Podcast on iTunes, where you can find our NFL All 32 podcasts, our fantasy football starting lineup, as well as our Scout Team podcast, and leave us a 5-star rating. Also, subscribe to the Football Gameplan Network, located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Finally, every Thursday and Friday evening at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, be sure to check out the Football Game Plan show on the Game Plus Network. Check with your cable provider for channel listings.